Welcome back to The Author's Edge. I am your host, Allison Lane, and I'm here to make your journey as an author easier and smoother and more exciting and fun, because you shouldn't have to become an expert in this too. Nobody has time to become an expert in all the things. And that's why I'm here. I'm a lifetime publicist and marketer turned book coach or marketing strategist or publishing expert. Nobody cares what my title is. What they do care about, and what you care about, is what can you get from listening to this? So thank you for showing up, because you know you can depend on me to bring you experts who know their poo and are going to deliver the goods for you. So today, Philippa Gamse is here to talk to us about websites. She's a digital marketer and an analytics expert, which just the term analytics gives me the full body hives. But she gave me some advice throughout this podcast that I'm going to put into action, and I want you to hold me to it. She has consulted with hundreds of clients and worked on websites that have generated hundreds of millions of dollars. So for authors, understanding your website and your website performance can feel overwhelming. I felt like just the word analytics makes my chest tighten. But Philippa helped me see that there are a few actions that I can take that will cut through the noise and help me focus on what truly matters. And I think you're going to find the same. So today we're diving into how to identify what works on your website and uncover hidden opportunities to make your website and your investment of time and money in your site work better for you, and make sure that your site is equipped to serve the people you're helping and to sell more books. So let's get into it. Philippa, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to pummel you with questions because we need your input and guidance, but also as I was reading through and researching all of your brilliance before our talk and pouring through your website, I was like, oh, I don't do that. I know I've been told about Google Search Console, but I don't know what it is. And you said, let me take a look at yours. So I have to admit that everything I know, being not tech phobic, but I would say have learned helplessness about technology because I was in corporate settings for so long. And if you needed a wire plugged in, you called the woman who did that. And if you needed a new screen, you didn't have to determine what that was. And if I needed a website built, I would almost just think it and it would happen, because I ran marketing and PR. So we need a new site or we need new language, and it would just poof, happen. Now, 5 years into serving people who want to get book deals and build their visibility and grow their career, I am the queen of my website, but only because people like you pointed out, wow, you're not using your page descriptions. Do you even know what those are? Now I am, but I think that a lot of people don't know what they don't know, and they feel bad about it. But I don't feel bad about not knowing something, because you don't know until someone tells you. So for all you folks out there who are thinking, I don't know, how do I get to a page description? Or what's really annoying is when people use jargon terms like your H1 and H2. People don't know what that is unless you tell them. So my H1 and H2, they weren't even set up right, but now they are. Now that I made myself vulnerable, what is a common mistake people making when they're trying to set up a functional website they can grow with?
Just clear up a couple of things.
Okay.
So firstly, you talked about Google Search Console. Google has various tools to help you make your website do your business better. So that's to do with search. So getting found in search engines, and that's where your page descriptions and your H1, H2 and stuff like that comes in. Okay. It's a really important tool. It's not my specialty. Search is not my specialty. I know about it. I do some of it. I would defer for any major work to somebody else. So the tool that I specialize in is Google Analytics.
Okay.
Now, Google Analytics does in fact connect with Search Console, but Analytics is telling you about what's actually going on a website. So how many people come, which is the sort of basic stuff that everybody knows, maybe they can tell, but the real power of Google Analytics is getting into that much more deeply. So, for example, what do people do when they get to your site? What do you want them to do, and do they do it? And then we can start figuring out things that really help you to focus on what works for your business. Like what kind of marketing tactics or what kind of people and which of your content generates the best results. So here's the bottom line. Said, I don't have analytics. And I've just looked at your website, and with a little handy dandy tool that I have, I can see that it appears that you have Google Analytics running on your website.
Awesome.
Right.
Happy accidents.
Which means, well,
somebody did that. I didn't do it.
Okay, which means that you've got all sorts of data that you don't know about, and you're shooting in the dark. Right now, in my opinion, which I guess I get to say because...
Oh, yes, you can call me on the carpet for sure.
Okay, so you are shooting in the dark with your entire investment in your website because you don't know what's going on, what's working, what's not working, and where you're wasting your time and money.
Amen.
To any depth. Now, a lot of website owners will say, but I know it's working because I get X number of sales, X number. Sure you do, obviously, because you know what you're doing.
I don't think they come through my website. I don't think they trip over me in a search. I think that most people find me through word of mouth, and because I'm on other people's podcasts or I speak, I'm invited to speak at Women's Leadership Summit or industry conference. And that's for me. And most of those people say, oh, I didn't even go to your site. I just knew I needed to work with you. I'm like, well, that's nice, but we still need the site to function because I'm going to send you an invoice or a page so that you can join my course.
Exactly. So, and that's an important point to make. And I shouldn't say that obviously you're running a successful business. Different websites play a different level of role in each business.
Yeah.
So for some people, for example, if you sell to government, I mean, you don't say a website, right? It doesn't work that way. For some people, their website really is a placeholder. For others, so just say this, what you're saying is, for example, you've got courses and you've got things that go on your site. So it's not just about sales and marketing. It's also about supporting your ongoing customers in other ways. So whatever your website is designed to do, the analytics is there to help you figure out if it's doing it effectively.
And I think that the more I enjoy this pivot I've made in the last several months after I read 10x is easier than 2x, I was like, oh, everything's changing. I had a hard talk with myself. And inside of 2 days, I was like, oh, let's cut off the appendages that already are like limping along. And everything is focused because there's so much opportunity when we focus. So I love that you're calling me on the carpet on this because it just means that I can get even more focused on serving the people who are already looking for solutions that they could find for free on my site. Every podcast has a blog page where there are answers and also free resources.
Right.
Not when I get my resource and it's just a sales tool. It's like free templates, people. And we're going to talk a lot about that. And I'm so glad that you're raising this for me because it's going to go into my bullet journal, which is...
And then there's one other question so the people who call you that you hear from tell you they found you in other ways. Your website, they may have seen your website, they may not. Your website may be a support to what they already know about you. What you don't know is whether you are in fact getting prospects to your site who don't call you because the site doesn't do it for them, which you therefore don't know about.
Exactly. And like everyone listening to this who is a debut author or a seasoned author, but they're teaching at university and now they have to establish a website. Maybe their website is 7 years old and it's on WordPress. Boo. I only say that WordPress is lovely, but I did delete my WordPress site twice by accident because it's not for people who have sausage fingers and have ADHD. And I just saw all the things and I thought, what's this button? And click and it wouldn't delete it. Right. So thank heavens for my virtual assistant. So what happens is these people that are still experts, they're not full-time authors, but they have a book that's coming out and now suddenly they're thrown into, I need a website that works. And usually they set it up and it looks like a digital business card. And so we stop that right away. Time out. We don't need your website to be Allison, book coach. Nobody cares what your title is. They just want to know, what do I get? But then we have to know that when you're an expert writing a nonfiction book, you are providing solutions and inspiration and perspective that people are looking for using Google. Right. And if your site is not set up for that, and mostly I'm talking to myself now, Allison, then you are essentially shouting in a room with a closed door. I have all this, but you can't hear me. Walk us through the basics of what do we need to know and take action on so that we don't feel like we have to hire an agency to set this up for us. And also just answer the question I know people are going to ask, can Philippa do this for me? Probably the answer is maybe yes, I don't know. But just walk us through what do we need to know.
So let me say this. I'm actually writing a book myself right now, which, yes, I'm very excited.
I can't wait to learn more about that.
Yeah, I'm hoping it's coming out in the second quarter, which is coming up, actually. What I find is a lot of people that I work with are like you. And you have your expertise, you have the stuff you love to do. Looking at a load of graphs and charts is probably not on that list. So you talked about, being in an agency, and some agencies are very good. Some of them really are not, because they don't understand analytics in depth. To use analytics effectively, you've really got to understand the business and you've got to understand what you're looking at. And a lot of agencies will do what we call vanity metrics, which is really sort of, you got more visitors this week than you did last week. So we're doing a great job as your agency because we're bringing you tons of people and everybody's happy. You don't ask any more questions. But the obvious question there is, well, so what? Visitors, that they're getting you the right ones. What did they do? Did they fulfill the outcomes that you actually want them to do on your website? For you as the business owner, I don't want you to have to get to grips with that data if you don't want to. Nobody who's ever hired me has said, Philippa, what I really need from you is 50 pages of charts and graphs and reports, right? The question that people who come to me want to know is, Philippa, what do I need to know to run my business better?
And let's make no mistake, when you're an author, your publisher expects you to be marketing yourself and your book. So number one, set up your LLC. It'll take 15 minutes. Do not pay someone to do this for you. Just Google irs.gov and you got it covered. LLC. And then second, your website needs to anticipate that people are going to look for you. They're going to want to come to your website, just like you're having somebody over for dinner. They're going to come to your front door. Do you just fling the door open and let them, I'm hiding, come and find us? Or do you greet them and walk them through where you want them to go? Right. Because you don't want them to go into the side room where you threw all of the unfolded laundry. Yes. That's a mess.
Yes, absolutely. So the key thing for you as the business owner, if you're going to work with somebody like me, so the answer obviously is yes, I can do this. This is what I do as a consultant. You need to understand your business inside and out, and you need to be able to explain to me, what is your website designed to do? So if we look at your website, I see various different calls to action. So to action is when you drive people to the next step. So I can see, for example, I'm on the page right now that's looking at your next chapter network. So you've got a community. Obviously, you're working with individuals. So you've got work with me. So you've got different outcomes that you want on the site, right? And everybody has different outcomes. And it's important to know what those outcomes are, who each one is aimed at, and where those calls to action are. Because then we can start digging in to start looking at, okay, are the outcomes that you're looking for actually happening? Because it's not just about how many people come and do they go. And are people consuming your content? So you've got a podcast page.
Yep, I just redid it. I hired a wonderful woman not off of Fiverr, but I think she's on Fiverr as well. But she's amazing. I call her Kajabi Carla because my site is on Kajabi and her name starts with a K. And so that's what I call her. She's fantastic. And I gave her the text and I said, here's the template that I bought from an amazing woman her website is Penny in Your Pocket. So I'll put this in, everything we talk about, I'll put in the show notes. And Kajabi Carla had that bad boy up in 2 days. And what was important is that anything that could be done automatically was done automatically, because updating pages, this and that, here and there, makes my neck hurt.
But for example, one of the big mistakes that people make with their websites is that they focus on they get traffic from because they want to know that things like search and social media are working for them. And they focus on, and what did they buy? Or again, I mean, I'm stressing outcomes here, but the truth is that a lot of people come to a website and they don't buy the first time. They look around. And so people tend to forget that whole bit in the middle where people are engaging with your content and figuring out what they think about you. And really importantly, figuring out if they trust you. For example, on your podcast page, you could make way more of you've got a lot of content here. This is something that I see a lot with people who have podcasts. What you tend to do is you put the newest podcast episode, everybody does that, obviously. But then as soon as you have a new episode, everything moves down. And so starts getting lost. I mean, I see it says see more, but, so typically any podcast site, tons and tons of content that's essentially hidden. It may well be full of, magic search engine keywords. There may be other ways that you can continue to promote it or use it. And you can also tell from analytics interesting things like how many people listen, applies to videos as well, right? How people consume your content. So not only how many people start listening to a podcast or watching a video, but how many actually go through and listen to or watch the whole thing. Because a lot of people drop off. A lot of people, you really have to hold their attention. It can be very helpful. For example, I had a client recently who makes tons and tons of very high content videos, which are wonderful. But the problem, I can see you're looking at your website here, but
now I'm thinking maybe I should pull it up and you can walk through what we should be doing. But but
let me just finish that story just as an example. The problem with this guy who had loads and loads of videos with wonderful content was that every single one started with, good morning, my name is, and I've been in this business for 150 years, and I do this and I do that. And people got really bored really quickly. And he literally lost 50% of all the people who started every video in the first 30 seconds.
Yikes.
And 90% by the first minute. Now, that's pretty bad, right? I mean, he really only got to the meat of his content after 1 minute, and he's already lost 90% of the people who started listening. So you wouldn't know that without looking at your analytics. And that's really one of the reasons to look at analytics, is because there's all sorts of stuff that you couldn't know. You couldn't possibly know if you didn't start looking at them in more depth with an idea of what am I looking for. It's not just how many visitors are there, how many pages are there. It's what are people actually doing? What are they engaging with? What do they like that I can do more of? And where am I wasting money and time putting stuff up that nobody cares about? Or I should say, putting stuff up that nobody sees, either because they don't care or because you're not directing them to it, so they actually don't know it's there.
Right. Because no one really wants to go and open all the doors and click all the links and go, especially because most people are looking at on their phones. Nobody wants to go scroll back up to find the navigation.
Exactly. Yes. You said to me, what should I be doing?
Well, what should anyone be doing? But
So, of
yes,
course,
we can use me as the guinea pig.
Well, the thing is, of course, right now I don't know because I'm only looking at your site from the outside. I don't have access to your analytics right now. I could tell you right immediately off the top of my head several red flags that I can see on the site that if I had access to your analytics, I would immediately start checking out to see if there's a problem. So, for example, it looks very nice. I love all the book covers and everything, but each page is quite long. Now, people tend not to scroll down long pages unless they're really interested, especially when the page has this kind of horizontal, there are sections, it's like in sections, right? You get to the end of a section, and if I'm obviously looking at it on my desktop right now.
Yeah.
It can almost look like I'm at the end of the page.
Yeah.
So am I going to keep scrolling? And if I don't keep scrolling, is there really important content that I'm not going to see because it's further down, including really important calls to action or a place where your main real, this is the point bit is, I'm not going to see it. And one of the things that we can do with a tool like Google Analytics, which is, of course, free. People these days are a bit suspicious of Google, but, a great tool. Out of the box, it doesn't do this. So it's very customizable. And you can customize it to really reflect the specific things that you're looking for or that we would decide together that we're looking for. One of the things that you can do is to measure exactly how far down the page each people go. So you can set little flags that fire off and say, number of people go 25%, 50%, 75%. By default, it only tells you when people are 90% of the way down the page, which is almost to the bottom. And for really long pages like you have, that's really not going to capture, helpfully, the fall off. So that's an example of something that if I was looking at your site, I would immediately check out. I would also, by the way, let you know that, is it all right if I embarrass you?
Oh, yeah, I don't get embarrassed.
So I actually did click on the join the network because I actually thought that looks interesting, especially since I'm about to bring a book out.
Yeah.
And you've got, this page called the Next Chapter Network. But I don't know if you've thought you have this problem because as the owner, we get so close to our site, we don't see stuff. But I finished looking at the page. I went back to the top to go back, and there's no navigation at the top of that page, and it doesn't say your main lane, main. The logo says Next Chapter Network only. I notice that if I click on it, I do get back to your regular homepage, but that's very confusing.
Okay, I will address that. That's a super easy fix. Best practice about sales pages like that is don't put the navigation like way back so that people can bounce around. But yeah, of course, my name should be at the top and you should be able to know where you are, where you've landed.
Yeah, and if you don't push back a bit on that, personally, I hate that philosophy. Because to me, this piece where you force people to do stuff, it's like, treat me like I'm stupid. I want to do something. If you're interesting me, you just told you you're interesting me. I'm bringing a book out. I see you. Looks interesting. I'd like to know more. You don't have to push me down some sort of funnel. I don't know. And one of the great things about analytics is that you can test stuff. So I can sit here and say, I don't like that philosophy. You can easily set up testing whereby if somebody went on that page, you could serve two different versions of the same. You can automate this very easily, right? One has your regular navigation on it and one doesn't, as it is now.
Yeah.
And you can easily test how those two pages perform against each other. So we don't have to sit here and I give my opinion. And
I'm just listening to the, I think that's such interesting and helpful, generous feedback that you're giving to me. So I accept it fully and I will act on it. And yet I think the best practice is not we want to shove anyone into a funnel or a tube or give it or limit their choices. But when people are confused, when they think maybe I want something else and I'll go back to where I was, then there are too many things to look at and then they bounce out.
Yeah.
Especially when websites are not organized in a way that limits people's scroll. And then it's almost like an ant farm where they're like, now I'm lost. I don't know how to get back to where I was. And they bounce out because they're just like, forget it.
And of course, there's the right way to approach each situation. And absolutely, of course, equally, there are absolutely pages that I've seen that are so busy that you don't know what to do. So
And that
you do
where
need to.
there are buttons and I like a page having multiple buttons that all go the same place. That's why when you go to my homepage, that you actually land on the work with me page, because that's what everyone says. How do I work with you? And I have not taken the time to develop a quiz at the top that says, do you need this or do you need that? Because that would actually be more helpful. But
Right.
I don't have that functionality yet. So
Right.
at least I have work with me and here are 3 choices.
Yeah.
That's it. That's
Right.
great. But
Yeah.
clarity is good.
No, and you do have to, I think I said this earlier, you do have to drive people around to take the actions you want them to take. So somewhere probably between a complete, but the thing about your networking page, I think is, or I was thinking is, okay, I'm interested, but I need to know more about who this person is, what kind of, then I did want to go back to the rest of your site to see more.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I would say is that, when we talk about best practice, one of the other things I find is that there's a lot of generic advice out there. There's a tremendous amount of advice that you must do this, you must do this. And honestly, I find that all mileage may vary, as they say. So whenever you're looking at that, this is the best practice or this is the general advice, just make sure that it really does apply in your situation. For example, a lot of information about mobile websites and how many people are now accessing the web on their phones, which is, of course, very important because it changes the user experience.
Yeah.
But you need to make sure before you go crazy about making sure your website's mobile friendly, that applies to you. So some of my clients are very much sort of B2B, to clients in the engineering, manufacturing space, for example, where their websites are used by people coming to buy parts or research about equipment and stuff like that. And they are typically on a desktop because they're in their offices searching for stuff. When you look at their analytics, so your analytics again will tell you what device do people use to come to your website. And you can see the breakdown. And so in those situations, the mobile usage is way low because of the nature of that business. So I'm saying it's important to make sure that whatever advice you're looking at, it does pertain to your situation.
Yeah. Let's take up, for instance, because I know this is book launch season. There are 3 seasons a year of book launches. There's January to May, which is very busy. And then there's June through September, which is really good for certain genres. And then there's like September to December, which more books are sold during that time than throughout the rest of the year, which is because of the holiday season.
Right.
So we're in a busy time right now, and most nonfiction authors are experts. They're or historians or medical practitioners. And I'm just pointing behind myself here. We've got Dr. Mara Einstein's book, Hoodwinked, which is how marketers are using the same practices as cults. Frightening, but true. She's a media expert. And then this memoir by Jessica, The Widow's Guide to Dead Bastards. It's riveting, and it reads like a thriller. So she didn't have she had a WordPress site, but now she's got a bestseller in Canada and the US. It's her debut. People want to connect with her, and she needs a website that can function when she's asleep because she can't write everybody back anymore. And then this is Breathtaking, another memoir, but it's Breathtaking, a memoir of family dreams and broken genes by Jessica Fine, who's a healthcare advocate and now has a podcast. So all of these are very different, but Einstein's book, she had a website before, but she had to develop a new one because she knew that people were going to be coming to her site looking for advice, and she needed to have some guides that were easily downloadable. So she prepared that in advance. She's not doing courses or classes yet. She's still teaching at the university. But these memoirs, when you write a memoir, people who want to write a memoir want to, quote unquote, air bunnies, pick your brain. which is after 2 people,
Yeah.
you have to charge for that. Put people in a group. They appreciate it more. They learn more. They value the community more. And you have to anticipate that people are going to ask. So you want to be prepared for that, which is my long way of saying, at the very least, on your website, anticipate that people are going to be looking for a solution and a way to get personalized attention, which doesn't have to be one-on-one. Based on that, Philippa, if you could guide people how to welcome a new visitor to their homepage, what should they be greeted with?
Actually, that's a great question because, like you're saying, some homepages try to do a bazillion different things.
Yeah.
One of the most, you said that you've got 3 different types of people. Is that right? Is that what you said?
The 3 I just gave you, there's usually a memoirist that's a debut, or a seasoned expert, or almost everyone I work with is a debut author. And they're running an ER at a major hospital. And they don't have time to they just need things to work, and they need them to set it up the first time, which means setting up a website means writing it in a way that then the person laying it out for you can just do their job. But if we don't write it, the content in the way that, Philippa, that you tell us to, it's going to stink.
Yeah.
Because no matter what, you land at the top. And the biggest mistake I see people make is that they want the top to say, "Hi, I'm Allison." No, absolutely not. We don't need that.
Yeah, so actually you said it earlier already. One of the easiest things to do is to say, if you know the main categories of your visitors, to say, "Hi, are you a memoir person, B, whatever, and immediately direct them to a page that's dedicated to that person or to that type of visitor." And something else actually that I would love to see on your site, because as we're talking, come across as you talk, welcome video. "Hi, so you're thinking of writing a memoir, or, here's how I can help. Here are a few things you need to know." Because I think that would be really powerful.
I do love to. I am not shy when it comes to just talking in my basement into my camera.
Yeah.
There's no one here, and if I don't like it,
you do it
then
again. Yeah.
I do it again.
I think that would really come across, because at the moment you don't have that, right? I don't see any video.
I had one, but I didn't like my sweater or the lighting, so I took it down because I'm vain. And I think that, yes, but I recognize that should have been on my list. I'm going to put it into my bullet journal so that right after this I record.
But seriously,
welcome.
So for anybody watching, if you have some very different categories of visitor that you can identify, like Allison just did, then that's a really good technique, is to have separate pages for each of those where you can talk directly to the kinds of things they're going to want to hear, opposed to trying to say all things to all people all the time, which really doesn't work well.
Yeah. So that's super helpful. So the thing is, for anyone who has a debut coming out, one of the first things we do is identify who your audiences are. And everyone has 5 different audiences, and no, they don't overlap. So you may not say, "I'm writing a memoir, so my audience is people who love memoir." No, that's not how people read genres. That's how people read fiction. "Oh, I love historical fiction." Or "I love erotica." Meow. But that's not how people read nonfiction. Mm-hmm. People read nonfiction around a topic, a theme, or a solution. And they don't read just memoir. They might, so let's take The Widow's Guide to Dead Bastards as an example. I know it's the best title ever, and Jessica Waite is such an unassuming, lovely, soft-spoken woman, and I love her dearly. And the fact that she wrote this book, and it is so honest and compassionate and also direct, is ever Canadian of her. She's the sweetest woman. So when we were looking at her audience, and I worked with her in a small group program, which PS, now I know I have to update my website to say that. She, of course, was thinking memoirists or anybody who's interested in grief. No, that's not, people aren't what the audiences are anyone who's been widowed. That's beyond, grief is like saying anybody who breathes, like it's too big. Right. Anybody who's been widowed and anyone separately, anyone who has a relationship that is unresolved, but they're separated from that person. You can't resolve a relationship with someone who's passed. Yeah. Or maybe you can. But those are two different things. And then there's also, she had topics about financial independence because her spouse died and he handled all the dollars. There was that. And there were 3 others. But now that we know that, she can address those people based on the podcast that she's been on. And she's been on my podcast, and direct them to the podcast episodes that they would be most interested in and make sure that they're on her site. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for all these authors,
as long as the categories that you identify are easy for people to self-identify into.
Okay.
So if somebody's looking at it going, I don't know, it could be that, it could be that, then it's a little more difficult.
I think it's sometimes I see on websites, maybe even like podcasts or like a media page, that you can search by topic.
Yes.
So that would be one way to do that.
It's another great way to organize your podcasts. Earlier I was talking about the amount of wasted content I see on podcast sites or podcast pages. So that, and that's something I did with one of my clients, was we created category pages for her podcasts. She does podcasts for managers. Within that topic, there's lots of different subtopics. So then again, you've got categories you can point people around into deeper levels of your content.
Well, I love that, because that's one of the things that people do normally is that they go by what the website templates come with. Yeah, we have a media page and we have an about page. And I'm thinking about is boring because nobody wants to read about your backstory. Or
no, actually.
Well, I like to meld them because nobody wants 15 pages.
Yeah. Okay. The only thing I was going to say is, in my experience, if somebody goes to a business site and they've never seen that site before,
yes,
do go to the about page because they want to know who is this person or who is this company, what's their history, how long have they been around, do they know what they're doing. That about page, you can't get rid of it. I would strongly say you shouldn't get rid of it.
I don't think we should get rid of it, but there's a lot of people have an about, a media page, a books page, and a podcast page. And then sometimes it'll be like press. Sometimes they write articles for media versus coverage of them, and they'll have those separated. And I go, Peter, Paul, and Mary, that's too many pages.
You just have to be careful because, for example, if you are looking for press coverage, a press page, page that's dedicated to journalists can be really helpful because on there, it's so busy, they haven't got time to find stuff. You give them a page where it's like, here's my picture, here's my bio, here's my quotes, here's this, that, whatever you want to give them.
Right.
In a one-stop shop. And that's actually a very helpful thing to do.
But wouldn't you rather see that under a navigation that had a drop down? A top navigation that had a, like, I don't know if you would call it media, or you would have one page that's for press inquiries, one page that's media coverage, one page that, at least so it's organized in people's heads.
Yeah, it depends. But what I'm really saying there is if you have the audiences like you're really trying to get reporters, where it's really important that you make it absolutely easy for them to find what they need, then that's the priority.
So what's the first step? That when people, if they're starting from scratch or they're chucking an old site and they say, okay, is the first step sketching everything out on a piece of paper so that where you're taking them?
Yeah, it could well be. And, it's a website. So it doesn't have to be totally strictly hierarchical because people can jump around your structure. I mean, it's helpful to have a structure so that you know where you're plugging stuff in and what goes where. I mean, the thing I would say is that in all of my experience, I mean, there's just so many times where we put up a website and then we watch how people actually use it, and then they do things that surprise us. People always end up doing things that surprise me. Never quite know. But the thing about the analytics, again, is that if you're tracking what's going on, you can see when they start doing things that surprise you, and then you can act on that.
What's an outdated website strategy that doesn't work anymore?
That's a really interesting question.
I get bonus points for interesting questions.
The things that I find very interesting is web gives us capabilities that we didn't have before. I've been doing this for a while, so I've been around for a bit. In fact, to be honest, I've been working with the internet since it started when I was much younger. But that gives you the opportunity to sort of what works and what doesn't work. But I think the really interesting thing is that marketing fundamentals don't necessarily change. I talked already about one of the most important things you have to do is establish trust with your visitors. Have to be clear that you can do what you say you do. And there's stuff that doesn't change in that regard. And there's all these predictions about stuff that isn't going to work anymore. I mean, I think I still have a screenshot of the cover of Wired magazine back maybe 2010, something like that said email is dead. Nobody uses email anymore. Kids don't want to use it. It's boring. And here we are in 2025. And whenever you use surveys of marketers asking about most effective online marketing tactics, email is still way up the top of the list.
Yeah.
Because everybody still uses it or use other things, but we're still using email. Yeah. Is there anything that really doesn't work anymore? I don't know. I think things evolve.
I think the change for authors or experts who want to be contributing to media or expand their expertise and start speaking on stages, especially as I only work with women and all of my clients are over 50, which means they're seasoned, they're experts, and they've reached the top of their industry. And when you reach the top of your industry and you still know that you love what you do and you're not ready to go crawl in a hole or moonwalk out of there and retire, that you want to share what you know, which means breaking out and following a path that hasn't been set for you, which means it might mean you're going to be speaking, but not at an industry conference. You're going to be speaking at a mass market conference or, I don't know, running a course, or you have to think bigger about where you're going, and you're the one who has to do that, which means that your website you own now, and email is the way to for when people opt in and they say, oh, I am interested in you, they want to get something from you. You have to give them that opportunity. And just posting on social, even when someone follows you, is not a guarantee that they're going to even see your post. I think we used to think maybe they won't see it because of the time I posted. Now, they might not see it because the platform might not show it to them, even though they clicked show me all Philippa's posts, or I want to see all of Allison's videos. The only way to guarantee that is to give them that invitation. Hey, I'm happy to send you these resources once a week. Give me your address so I can make sure it reaches you. But that's a big mistake that people make, is that they see that interaction as, oh, I don't want people to have to give me their email. How are you going to send something? You're giving a gift to someone. How do you expect them to get it? It's not even, we're serving someone. Why wouldn't you deliver something that comes to what they're saying is easy for them? So that's number one on a website, I would think, is to give someone a way to get more from.
Well, I said email is still one of the top marketing tools that marketers use in terms of effectiveness. Therefore, and yes, absolutely. If somebody gives you their email address, they've said they want to hear from you, and it's gold. It's worth. And as you said, social media I think the average organic reach of a social media post is way below 5%. So it's very, very low.
I think it's below 1%.
And social media advertising, again, this is where analytics can help. I do know businesses that will jump into social media advertising because it feels very seductive and the social media companies do a good job of promoting their ads. It tends to be cheaper, for example, than Google's paid search ads. But again, in the analytics, you can track by traffic source. So you can see exactly who comes from social media and specifically which platform and even which campaign. And then you can see their engagement levels. And very typically, I hate to say this, but engagement levels from social media are very, very poor, typically, because people aren't really shopping on social media. They're not really thinking about their business necessarily. They're more likely to be talking to friends, watching cat videos.
I do watch all those cat videos, every single one. We don't have a cat anymore, but I do get caught, especially when they rescue a cat.
But you're not in the looking to buy a business service mode right now.
So are you saying that one of the biggest opportunities for people is to make sure that their call to action of you could sign up here to get more book recommendations or resources for healing, navigating grief, or whatever the resource is, but to make sure that you're offering that in a way that's not at the bottom of the page? Because I heard you say, don't make people wait to scroll.
I mean, okay, so it could be at the bottom. I mean, it should be at the bottom of the page. So when you get to the bottom, if you do, that it's there. But there's, put as you do. I mean, I've seen it on the site. You put calls to action all the way through. For me, the thing is, think about the emotional response of your visitor to the content that you're presenting. And any time where they might be saying, that's interesting, tell me more, that would be a good place to put a call to action, because you don't want to make them then have to figure out how to get to the next step. The other things that people do that sometimes can be off-putting is that there's a form that you fill in, maybe as an initial kind of contact me form. And it's typically important to make that pretty short, because the more you ask, the less likely people are to fill it in. And I've seen forms that ask you all sorts of stuff that, they contact you, you could ask them that at that point. But again, with analytics that you customize, you can tell how many people start filling in a form and then don't complete it. And again, if you look at that kind of data, you can easily tell if your forms are potentially too long and are annoying people.
Yeah. I started a form yesterday and I backed out of it because I was like, I don't want to answer all these questions.
Right.
And it might have been 4 questions. But I'm like, why do I have to do this in order to come to your masterclass?
Right.
I just want to, no, thank you.
And
Forget it.
as I owner, the question is, are you going to get, that sometimes I go to a business webinar and it asks me, for example, what's your annual business revenue? It's none of their business. I don't see why I should tell them that. And I lie. I'll say, it's over $50 million, which it isn't, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So what's the point of that? They've got useless data.
Yeah. I recently was asked to be on a podcast and sent the intake form, so they had my bio and stuff. And then it asked me all kinds of financial information. Mm-hmm. What in the world? How? And then I thought, I don't want to be on that podcast. I don't care how big the audience is. That is ridiculous that they would use that as a trolling tool.
I guess some of these, as obviously you can tell, I also guest on podcasts, and I know some of them say you must be making over X amount of money to be a guest on these podcasts, because they obviously it's a measure of your success in some ways. I'm not too keen on those either.
Yeah. I reached out to you because I was like, she knows her stuff. And that's what we're here to do, is to help people who want to write books and are writing books market themselves better, make better decisions faster with more confidence, so that it's exciting and fun. This isn't supposed to be overwhelming and crushing, and in no way should you feel like you're spinning your wheels. Clear direction. So what we've heard today is your website content should be planned so that you know who you're welcoming and what they're looking for. And that Google Analytics can help you understand what people are doing once they come to your site and what they really want to do, so that you can make decisions faster. And that's the best thing. Now, let's pivot because I do have 2 other questions for you. What is a book that you are loving right now?
Are loving, right?
You mentioned one earlier. So you mentioned Nexus. Is that right?
Oh, that was, yes, that was in the survey that you sent me. Yes.
Yeah.
Nexus is, there's this guy called Yuval Noah Harari, who's an Israeli, he's like an economist, historian. He's amazing. His first book was called Sapiens, which is like a history of the human race in terms of our thinking and our development and the way societies work. And Nexus is about information and how information works. And, you know, for somebody, it's fascinating. Yeah.
We will put that in the show notes. Now, Philippa, last question. Before we call this podcast complete, what is the one thing you want to leave people with today?
Honestly, if you have a website that plays any kind of role in your business and you're not looking at the analytics to see what's going on, you are shooting in the dark with your investment in that website. So please, you don't have to get to grips with the data yourself. Find somebody like me that can help you. But please take a look at what's going on and make that website really worth its weight in gold to you.
Perfect advice. Thank you so much for being here and for agreeing to help authors get a better edge.
Thank you.
For sure.